things and starting to over associate all things good with whiteness that they now had access to. And so we've been talking about that goal and what happened with that goal. Did it really happen? Are we now integrated? Are things now fair? And then if that's the case, then how do you go about creating unity and true integration, which is, I mean, we're all connected, right? So it makes sense that we'd want to be, we're one human family. We're not multiple species. So we should be able to live together harmoniously. So why aren't we?
Well, it starts with the big lie. Okay. It really does start with the big lie. And I think, I actually prepared for today's class. I have
look at you.
I'm recommending these books because, actually I read a couple of them years ago. You have Sundown Towns, you have The Color of Law, No Equal Justice, and Two Nations, Black and White, Separate, Hostile, and Unequal, along with Post-Traumatic. And, I was trying to figure out how we have this conversation because I think we have this illusion of inclusion, which is kind of where I am, that we had the illusion of inclusion. So I want to actually read from Post-Traumatic and read about, what was it called? Watchmen, right? Where they actually, the show that came, what are you doing? The show,
it was bothering me.
The show that came on that really looked at Tulsa and what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was a series that was on. You didn't watch it? Okay.
Maybe. I watched a whole bunch of those types of things. You made me.
Okay. So I didn't think it was recent.
Oh, then maybe not.
I think it was called The Watchmen.
No. I did see that. Okay.
Good. I'm glad I'm not talking to myself. Okay. And I think a lot of people, as I was reading back through the material that I read years ago, there's just a real mythology around the whole idea that we have this, integrated community, and we don't have an integrated community.
Right.
For example, I don't care where you are, if you're watching this, is there a Black community? Do you know where the Black people are? Do you know where the Mexican people are? Do you know, is there a hood?
Is there a Chinatown? Right.
All of those things, yes. And again, this illusion that has been, I'm gonna just have to read stuff about it. I mean, I've been reading, and it's just made me mad all over again, right? But I wanted to start maybe with James Lowen, who wrote Lies My Teacher Told Me, that book. And he wrote this book, Sundown Towns, and a lot of people had a problem with it. They're going, why are you drudging this up? He says, because we still have them.
Exactly.
We have Sundown Towns. This is not new. We still have segregated communities. We have white communities. All of those things still exist in America. And we've, everybody's kind of acting like, why can't everybody get along? Well, every single time we try to, there was a problem, like burning your town to the ground. So let's start with a discussion about the more recently one that people have been talking about is Greenwood. So I'm going to read from the book, and it's just a couple of paragraphs so that we can kind of start this conversation.
Okay.
In 1921, African Americans had managed to build Greenwood, a booming industrious town within Tulsa, Oklahoma, that came to be called the Negro Wall Street by local residents. Segregated towns like Greenwood formed because it was often unlawful for Blacks to own businesses in white cities. The tensions in Tulsa were part of a national pattern during the teens and 20s when city after city exploded in the worst racial conflicts that the country would ever see. Fear of Black independence and self-determination took a Freudian form of rape hysteria. In one town after another, racial violence was sparked by rumors that a Negro had harmed a white woman. Here we go. This happened in Washington, Omaha, Kansas City, Knoxville, Tennessee, Longview, Texas, Rosewood, and Florida. Why were tensions exploding at this time? In part because In the face of more than 300 years of bondage, segregation, and oppression, African Americans were organizing and were building healthy and economically self-sustaining communities. Against overwhelming odds, they were becoming successful for a multitude of reasons. White society could not sit casually by and watch us flourish. So in one of the most successful Black communities seen in America up until that time, it seemed like something had to give. One morning during rush hour, people claimed they heard Sarah Page, a white elevator operator, scream, and then saw Dick Rowland, a Black shoe shiner, running from the elevator. As a result, Rowland was arrested and jailed for assaulting a white woman. The next day, an article, an editorial in the local newspaper called for Rowland to be lynched. That night, a white mob went to the courthouse to get Rowland, and a group of Black men marched in from Greenwood to protect him. A confrontation between the groups ensued, shots were fired, and the riot began. As the Black men retreated to their community, white police officials deputized many of the mob and gave them instructions to, in effect, go out and kill you some damn niggers. Perhaps as many as 10,000 whites stormed Greenwood. When it was all over, Greenwood had been razed to the ground. Hundreds were dead. Ironically, Sarah Page refused to press charges against the accused, and Dick Rowland was acquitted. Once again, the familiar theme of a white woman being raped spawned a reign of terror by thousands of whites that left hundreds of people dead, the majority Black, and the prosperous, segregated town, Black town of Greenwood burned to the ground. I think that, again, after slavery was over, everybody has this idea that, everything was fine. Everything wasn't fine. Everything began to become separated.
More horror then, right? More horror on top of it, because you're supposed to be free. That's even a more psychologically damaging, because when you're in bondage, you know the deal. You know what I'm saying? As sick and twisted as it is, you know the rules, right?
Exactly. And one of the things that kind of struck me, and I really loved reading this book, Two Nations.
Someone asked if you could go back over the list of books you had in the beginning. Yeah. You kind of ran to them.
The one is called Two Nations, Black and White, Separate, Hostile, and Unequal by Andrew Hacker. It was written back in the 90s. He did a really good job. And it's really interesting because he deals with students in classrooms around this. And it's amazing how they behave around it. The other book is called No Equal Justice by David Cole. And this really looks at the criminal justice system. It's really straightforward. You can't read this book and not know how the institution, the criminal justice system, was never designed to be equal and just and fair to Black people. The other one is called The Color of Law. This is a more recent book by Richard Rothstein. Excellent book where he really talks about the fact, and I will read a few quotes from here as well, that these were laws that were enacted, federal, state, local laws that were enacted to maintain segregation from the time of slavery, whether once we had the de facto segregation, and then that was ruled, we can't have segregation anymore. We'll have, we want to make certain that everyone has equity and justice and fairness. And that just simply never happened. And he talks about that. He talks about how this was legislated. This wasn't some accident that happened. It was deliberate and intentional, and it was written into law. The other book is called Sundown Towns by James Loewen. And he basically documents all the sundown towns in America, and the fact that they've always been there, and they still are there,
and they're still on the books. I mean, they haven't, just because they haven't been enforced doesn't mean they've been removed.
Right.
They're still there, so the idea that, and it's so sad in so many ways, because like I said, it's it's like when you're playing a game outside, you see children playing outside, you see a little smaller child, can I play? And like, sure, you can play, but you have to do all these different things, and they change the rules on them. And you realize like that's what always happens, right? They go, you can play the game so long as you can, all these rules, and then they change the rules. And every time we try to adjust. I mean, I know people who are very, very jaded on the judicial process, just even in voting. And I've been telling them, you have to exercise your vote because you have to exercise your locus of control. You can't control every dynamic. You can only control the action that you have. And right now, looking at, you and I, we recognize, as Baha'is, we definitely believe in the oneness of mankind, oneness of humanity. But we're very clear about the status of where we are right now, and that you can't get to that point with injustice.
And this has been the thing that's so amazing about this conversation now, and this all was kind of sparked. I know our family started talking about it when a group of African Americans bought up a bunch of land,
97 acres
97 acres of land in Georgia. And there's been a buzz all over the place about why they did it. I know there were real estate agents involved, and one woman said she fears for her son's life every waking day. And so I think even though it's not real clear everything that's going on with that, part of the thinking is, let's build it. Let's create village. Let's create a community that's safe for us, that loves us, that embraces us. Then you have a whole lot of people that are like, well, you're self-segregating. We're already segregated.
Well, and not only that, but I'm like, when have we been successful in not letting them burn all of our crap down? That's my issue. It's like, yeah, okay, you do all that, you get it together. And unless you really have, because this is my point, I believe in doing that kind of a thing in the sense that we have to deal with the reality of what's happening. We know that race is a social construct. It's not real. It's all created because we're one species of human being. The idea of division of races is really bizarre. But the fact is, there are real ramifications for racism and these systems that are continuing to hold us back. That's the reality.
Right. So let me read from Two Nations from Andrew Hacker. And this, of course, is back in the 90s. He says, Black Americans are Americans, yet they still subsist as aliens in the only land they know. Other groups may remain outside the mainstream, some religious sects, for example, but they do so voluntarily. In contrast, Blacks must endure a segregation that is far from freely chosen. So America may be seen as two separate nations. Of course, there are spaces and places where the races mingle. Yet in the most significant respects, the separation is pervasive, penetrating. And as a social and human division, it surpasses others, even gender, in intensity and subordination. America is inherently a white country in character, in structure, in culture. Needless to say, Black Americans create lives of their own. Yet as people, they face boundaries and constrictions set by the white majority, America's version of apartheid. And it goes on to say that we must not be too quick. And this is something that's amazing. We talk about America being a multicultural nation, right? It says, nor should we be too quick in proclaiming that America will become multicultural as well. True, one can point to exotic neighborhoods and parades and festivals, foreign language newspapers, television channels, along with calls for new kinds of courses in college and schools. It would be more accurate to say that the United States will continue to have a single dominant culture. It doesn't really matter whether it's called white or Western or Anglo or Eurocentric or any other title. It would be better simply to describe it as a structure of opportunities and institutions that are willing to use and exploit the energies and talents of people of various origins. So what we're saying is, yeah, we're multicultural to the extent that we can utilize whatever skills, abilities you bring, but don't get it twisted. This song's not about you. And over again in all the books, and I'm going all the way back to the 80s, coming all the way forward, looking at even Isabel Wilkerson's books about the migration of Black people. Again, there is just this kind of blindsided feeling that people have, well, no, if people just work hard.
But this is the thing that I think about all the time. When you look at oppressed peoples,
okay,
and then you look at us,
okay,
and we talked about this before with the Dalit and other. There are oppressed people all over this planet that have experienced all kinds of things. we're not suggesting that our plight is been, necessarily more or less than those people's. But we will say what's fascinating about this situation with us is the illusion part. Because in other cultural frameworks, even the oppression is clearly spelled out. This is what the rule is. Even if you're in a horrible caste situation, that's what it is. Everybody's clear on what it is. It may be terrible and horrible, but there's not a suggestion that it maybe isn't that way. Okay. Right. The problem with this being here is the idea that you espouse these values. Oh, we are inclusive. We want to be right. But the natural culture of what you actually want and believe is built on something that's nefarious. Like it's like, I think about, remember the lady, remember I told you, like normally I can see a microaggression coming. I normally can see it. And this is an analogy that literally walked into my house. Okay. Here's the deal. I built a house. I was very excited about doing that. And all of the people who came in to do, the first few days, they go and they check everything in your house to make sure it's good the first month or whatever. And the electrician was a woman. The plumber was a woman. I was like, wow, this is great. Look at all these women. Now they're all white women, but hey, they're women. This is advancement. We're in a little area that it was pretty, rural and non-diverse, and my whole block is diverse, right? I'm like, we're coming along here. This is what I start to feel, right? Look at us. We're moving up. The Mexican family, the Indian family. I'm like, we're good. We're good. We all built our houses. Look at us. So the electrician lady is telling me, because I'm so hype about her being a woman, is telling me all these pieces about my house, more than I ever would want to know in life, about my stove and about, this is a filter. Did you know you can undo this? I'm like, I didn't know, but I don't have anything to do. So I'm just, I'm no problem to pump you up today. So I took all of that in till we get to my ovens, my double ovens. So again, I normally can see a microaggression coming a mile away. Someone's about to call me articulate or something. I can tell it's going to happen. But in my house, I wasn't prepared. My guard was down. We had moved on up and built a house. So I feeling pretty good. And I'm complimenting this chick. Okay. So what happens is the woman says to me, these are your oven sets. And let me tell you about your oven, your double oven. I'm like, okay. So she says, so this is the master and this is the slave. about my ovens. So I go, okay. So I stopped myself for a second. I'm a little stuck because I'm like, am I tripping? We're talking about ovens. Is it me or was that, what just happened here, right? So I'm like, while I'm stuck, normally I can come with them. I'm pretty quick. But in my house, when I didn't see it coming, I'm kind of stuck. So I'm sitting there, I'm kind of stuck. I'm not saying anything anymore because I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And she goes, so the master, it cooks efficiently, it cooks really quickly, it takes all of the energy from the slave oven, and basically the slave oven cannot cook efficiently, it's slow, don't put your turkey in that one because it won't get done. Listen to me. I'm like, if this is not an analogy for white supremacy, what else? What sucks all the energy from the bottom oven. Now again, I'm stuck. But what I've realized, start realizing, and she's going, just what I realized is two things are going on here. One, the originators, the Frigidaire originators of this oven, which is what it's called. I looked it up. It is called the Master and Slave. But you've been doing this work, you told me, for 30 years. You've been fragrancing every one of the segregated homes you've been in, because you've been doing this for white people for a long time in this area. This is your spiel. This is your little thing that you do, right? So you probably get a little chuckle from them at that little, because it wasn't like, and the slave. It was made, the whole thing was done in a way that I'm sure you get a response. You were expecting a certain kind of response. Didn't even consider that you shouldn't say that to me. So we start walking out and I'm like, okay, if my children were there, I would have been probably a little more swift. But I was really trying to make sure I wasn't tripping. I can be real black sometimes. And I was like, maybe am I being too black in this moment about the ovens? No. So we're walking and I said, so first, let me say, honestly, I really appreciated all the information you provided to me about my appliances. Maybe consider losing your master slave analogy, even if just for Black home owners, maybe. So now this is her opportunity to access her full humanity. This is her opportunity to pause and recognize the error of her ways, and to say, because of course we all espouse these inclusive practices. We all espouse that it doesn't matter whose house I'm in, right? Well, that's what it's called. I mean, you have Samsung refrigerator, but that's a Frigidaire. That's American made. That's what it's called. It's not, I mean, I get it, but that's what it's called. So you shirked your opportunity. You decided to avoid your opportunity to access your full humanity, right? In that moment. Because again, you could have called it the main and the secondary. You could have called it primary, secondary. You could have called it just anything else. The top and bottom, anything else.
That's what I was thinking. Top and
bottom, primary, secondary, any of those things would not have elicited that kind of a feeling in me. But your natural way of being has been normalized, that you could, just in your work, you've been fragrancing with racism, all these homes you've been going in for 30 years. So of course, now I got to call my home building association. I got to call them, to call the contractor, to call the local people to get her ass. Okay, now I got to do all that. But what I realized about that is that analogy was so perfect for me, because even in moving and building my house and doing all the stuff that I thought would give me some measure of calm and safety, because now we've all done this in this neighborhood. We all built our house, no matter who you were. And I still had to, you see what I'm saying? This is what I mean, is that I was caught off guard because I had done all these things, right? That I thought would create more safety for me in this space, in my own damn house. Okay. But that's what I started to realize. This shit is deep. It's very deep, and it goes beyond. I'm like, when you got me stuck in my kitchen thinking about whooping your tail over an oven, it is a problem. You know what I'm saying? So I think when we start, the danger in doing well, the danger in moving up, or in getting the access, is not always good for you or your community. And I think that's the part that's been a hard pill to swallow, even though we believe in integration.
Yet there's a piece of me, and I know that there are a lot of people, that are going, gosh, you can't segregate. And the thing that I struggle with is the fact that people live with segregation happily every single day. If you were to ask them, any city, where the Black folks? Well, if you go to, they're gonna know where they are, and they're gonna, do you just think we just all got together?
I've never been there before. I heard.
Oh no, I had somebody tell me, I don't go over there. I had a person say something to me about my house. Come into my house and say, I don't usually go over there. I go, okay, look at the time. Really? You don't go over there? But so while we live with this segregation, we have a pretense that these lines aren't already drawn. Mm-hmm. And so when these people decided to buy up all this land, there was something exciting about it to me. There was something about it that was appealing. And the part that was appealing was, like I live in a neighborhood right now that's Black. My neighborhood is Black. Everybody, and there is I don't even know what to call it. There is a comfort, there's a feeling of support. Everyone speaks to everybody. There's no drama. I mean, it's amazing to me, the idea that what we do in our effort to try to move up, as you would say, is to move out in a way. Who says we have to do that? I've been working with people all over the United States. I work with people in Section 8. Mm-hmm. Section 8, people that are renting, people who are constantly being evicted, all kinds of stuff. So I've been saying to people, and these are families. These are families of working class people that are struggling, but they're saying, I want my kids to be safe. I want to not have to worry about. I said, have you ever thought about the idea of getting together with some of your friends and saying, we have to rent, we can't afford to buy right now, but let's all rent together.
Right.
Let's find a space so that I know that if I don't get home in time, that my son can go to your house. Mm-hmm. And I know he's going to be okay. I started working with families and communities around the United States and saying to them, there's no reason why you can't still build community and still build village, even if you can't own it. Now, the optimal thing is to own it so nobody can tell you, you got to go. You got to move. And so I think it's really it's something appealing. I think everybody, that's why this article had got such a response, because Black people are kind of going, I want to go.
Can I come? You
Can
should.
I
This
come?
is the thing.
Can
This
I?
is the thing.
Is
Even
this
when,
still an option?
even when it's weird because it's like going to a Black college, right? Only people who go to a Black college really understand it. Like my friend Sandy always says, shout out to Sandy Wade. My friend Sandy always says, I refuse to have conversations with people about Black colleges when they cannot relate. She's like, I'm not going to waste my time. People try to go, well, what do you think? She's like, I refuse. I refuse to engage in this conversation. You don't understand. I'm not going to. And the idea of being in a space for 4 years where people expect you to do well, tell you that they have high expectations for you, that you meet other people who are wishing you well and who believe in your success and believe in your abilities. I mean, it was the weirdest thing when I met I won't even need to say his name, but I met the nerdiest teacher in my life. I was like, is he real? Like he was like a movie character that I've never seen before in my life. The super, super smart professor who had kind of a cross-eyed thing happening and was just super like corny. And I was like, are you real? But it was so amazing to be able to be in a classroom with someone that brilliant that he wasn't even in touch with us. That's how brilliant he was. And I was like, it was like a made up character. It didn't seem real. And having those experiences this close to you. I was telling my daughter, I probably know 100 doctors, medical, PhDs, dental. I probably know 100 doctors. And I went to a tiny little Black college, Fisk. But the thing about it is having that access to those services is what people had in segregation. They knew who the Black doctors were. They knew where the Black dentist was. They knew, right? Because they had that access. And as soon as they said, oh, there, you can actually go to the white dentist. It's like, well, he got to be better. He got to be better than this one. Oh, wait. And there are people who deal with that now. A lot of the doctors I know still have that experience with people who are like, oh, wait, not you, right? Because we bought that idea that they're better. But when you're in a 4-year institution for 4 years, it does something for you, because people are like, well, why would you want to do that when that's not reality? Oh, no. You need some. That was my reality for that time that I was there. And there's nothing like it. Just like running a Black organization. Let me just say, I have had, you wish for autonomy in your life. But when you go into a space where you do not have to package yourself in any way to make yourself more palatable, digestible for other people, and I didn't even realize I was doing that. I felt like I was being authentically myself finally at my last job until I got this job. And I was like, dang, I was still kind of faking. Just a little bit. I was still just a little faking, because I don't at all. We got one white guy there, and I have to remind him regularly, we're not going to do that white shit though. We're not doing the passive aggressive. You got to come on to what we do here, right? And as much as you didn't mean it, you got to stop doing that white shit. It's pissing people off. I get to say that in a way, and he is a kind-hearted person that has been indoctrinated in all this mess that everybody else has, right? So how do we capture that without promoting segregation? Like, we have to capture the fact that there's something about that. There is that community and the village, the connections that are not against anyone else. But
I don't think anyone has to explain the fact that they like being around their people.
Right.
I don't think there's anything necessary about having to explain why culture is important, or, like I said, when I moved here, I'm back in the South, and it's an amazing feeling of, first of all, being here. First of all, you have critical mass. I see Black people every day, all day, right? And it's a wonderful feeling when you've been starved, right? You're in situations where everybody's behaving strangely because nobody's comfortable with what's going on. And then there are circles where, again, our family, which is extraordinarily diverse, and our world is very broad. So you've grown up with diversity your whole life. You've not grown up with white is better, and I think that looking at, just going back to Isabel Wilkinson's book, The Warmth of Other Suns, and looking at people wanting to escape the Jim Crow South. So what we have to appreciate that's happened, and this is a part I wanted to share. Actually, I wanted to share it on a slide, but I'm not gonna do that. So here's what I would say, that after slavery officially ended, what you had was where did slavery go, right? So where slavery went was into peonage, unlawful selling of people back into slavery. Okay, so we know that. You saw 12 years a slave, wasn't just him. So then you had, after that, you had black codes and sundown towns and sundown laws, right? So you better not, the sun better not meet you here. I want to read this statement from a place called, and you probably have heard of this. Is it true that Anna stands for Ain't No Niggas Allowed? I asked at the convenience store in Anna, Illinois, where I stopped to buy my coffee. Yes, the clerk replied. That's sad, isn't it? She added, distancing herself from the policy. And she went on to assure me that all happened a long time ago. I understand racial exclusion is still going on. I asked. Yes, she replied. That is really sad. Now, this was in 2001, right? That particular thing was written. But what people have this idea of is that you think everybody just went on and decided to be where they are. They decided to be in places where there were food deserts, where there was no industry, where there were no schools, where there's no work. Yeah, everybody just voluntarily moved over there. Or were they places where white people abandoned, where there was redlining, where banks decided they weren't going to give loans, where, you see, that's the part of it that people don't understand that produced ghettos. That is exactly what, in fact, Richard Rothstein says in his book. But I want to read this piece. He says, today's residential segregation in the North, South, Midwest, and West is not the unintended consequence of individual choices and of otherwise well-meaning law or regulation, but of unhidden public policy that explicitly segregated every metropolitan area in the United States. The policy was so systematic and forceful that its effects endure to the present time. Without our government's purposeful imposition of racial segregation, the other causes, private prejudice, white flight, real estate steering, black bank redlining, income differences, and self-segregation still would have existed, but with far less opportunity for expression. Segregation by intentional government action is not de facto. Rather, it is what courts call de jure segregation by law and public policy. So some people don't get that. They don't understand, wait a minute, doesn't everybody have a free and equal opportunity before the law? No. No. I mean, it's for me, it's so hard for me to deal with the fact that there are people in 2020 that are sitting here going, they just don't want to work hard. They chose to do that. What is wrong with people?
No, but even black people, but also black people. This is the part where the illusion is even more dangerous to me. Didn't you say, when we talk about Randall Robinson talking about people robbing people of the memory of themselves? The idea, I've been fighting with this lately, because the idea is that we somehow never had it. Like this thing that we're always attaining. We're attaining Black excellence, and we want to move towards ending the achievement gap. We're trying to get stability in our housing. So I had a Black person having this conversation, right? We were talking about a Black person and was having this conversation, and the wondering was posed. I think it was Jada who actually posed it initially. I think she said, Jada, shout out to Jada Jefferson, Femwe Fiafi. She said, if every one of those people you're talking about, the conversation was about Black on Black crime with another Black person. And the whole idea was, if everybody who is struggling right now with gang violence and drug addiction and domestic violence and all the things that are happening, if they were enabled, their parents were enabled to have a home that they owned, a car, and a job, right? If we just those things, you don't have to be the best neighborhood, it has to be the best house, but if just those things, if they were able to all have those things, the level of stability that would happen in the community, the reduction of drug abuse, the reduction in crime, that's it. The whole idea of the 40 acres and a mule was the idea of being able to have some independence. within the structure, right? But
So the question becomes, how could you have, all these cities that were burnt to the ground, Rosewood, Green, wherever, all of these places where Black people were prospering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, white people weren't involved with that. But what white people figured out was, we need your money. So we're going to offer you this illusion that, oh yeah, come on, you can be here with us, because we need the fact that you're consumers. We need your money. We don't want you spending money with you. We want you spending money with us. And again, there's that belief that the white man's ice is colder. But there's also a fair number of Black folks that were like, no, I don't want to do that. And so what ends up happening, then you start looking at the color of law.
Yes.
You start looking at folks that are saying, we're going to make it impossible for you to do that. Mm-hmm. We're going to use laws to do that. People don't realize that the federal government made a statement, you got to read the book, but that is immoral to consider that white people have to live in proximity of Black people. The federal government said that.
Immoral. And
so when we see, when I see these Black people, buying all this acreage, there's a part of me that goes, I get it, because I need to know my children are safe. Mm-hmm. I need to know that nobody can come in. True story. My son, God bless him, shout out to Nadine. He's married with a family. He had just enrolled his children in school, and he got an eviction notice. It's called no fault or no cause evictions. Remember when those first came out? No cause. I don't have to tell you. I can say, Blackie, 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 I don't like you. And there's nothing you can do. It's called a no cause eviction. So he calls me up. He's hot. He's just hot. My son is. And he's like, I can't believe it. I just got my kids in school. We pay everything on time. And nope. And then what did they do? They started dumping out all of these complexes and all of these townhouses and just replacing them with white people. I mean, essentially, that's what they did. They were able to do a racist thing by something called no fault, no cause eviction.
Yeah.
You just got to go. It used to be that you go, I think I was, I was discriminated against. They go, so, and in the South, they really don't care, right? Yeah. So I said to my son, I said, okay, here's the thing. They can't tell you to leave if you own it. Right? So I said that over and over again. I said, now, I'll help you. I'll do whatever. I said, but they can't tell you to leave if you own it. I can honestly say, based on what we know, the other thing I would recommend that people look at is social determinants of health, economics. What are the social determinants? And so the social determinants of health, for example, look at stability. They could actually look at whether you owned your house, how long you owned your house, and whether you are going to be sick as an adult. The level of your health as an adult, based on how many years your family owned their home.
Which means how many years your family felt safe and stable. That's the key, right?
That's the key. And so I'm even looking at my own grandchildren and the difference in them. I'm looking at just that level of stability. And we all know that in America, that home ownership is the step to wealth. We all know that. So people go, well, why aren't they buying homes? Well, do we get the loan? Do we get even the salary equity to be able to qualify for the loan? You see, there's so many layers to this, but everybody wants to look at one little piece over here and go, well, what about that? I said, well, we got to figure out how that showed up. And so after segregation, after the Black codes, sundown laws, all the lynching, all of that, they said, okay, we're going to integrate. We're going to integrate you, but we're not going to allow you to live in white neighborhoods. Hence the big, thick book here. Okay, big, thick book. A lot of sundown towns. And matter of fact, he identifies that a lot of people think the sundown towns were in the South. He said they weren't. That's not where the sundown towns were. Illinois has something like 475 areas that are literally white only. And so and even though there's nothing that says it's white only, they make it absolutely impossible for you to be there. And so I think that the education that we need to have, all of us, right? Because I think, again, people, they just have no idea. Even Black people don't know why. When I was in Portland, I said, did everybody just sign up to live in Albina? Was that
right?
Did we all just have a meeting and say we're gonna move to Albina? No, that was the only place you could live.
Right.
And then they said, but that's really good area. It's close to town. And guess what they did?
Took it
back. So here's what happened. So then after we had segregation and we had redlining, then we had, oh, wait a minute, we have good words that go with it. Urban renewal.
Oh gosh.
We're gonna mow down the whole Black community and build a college or whatever else we want.
Hospital,
whatever it is.
Eminent domain.
Then we said, okay, so we have urban renewal. Then there's clearing and curing blight. Urban blight. We're just trying to fix the urban blight. Another word for, segregation. Then they said, okay, we got rid of all those words. We got a new one now. You all know the new word, right? Gentrification. So you give it all different names.
Can you say gentrification?
What I struggle with is, how here, I know we get there. We get to the point where a person called me the other day, a really good friend of mine, actually. She is from, where is she from originally? I won't even say because I might kind of out her. But she called me up. She was hot because this one white woman, ally, friend, she started hearing the woman started saying all kind of crazy things about Black people. So they were actually in the car driving to a conference, and she goes, we got a long way to drive, and I'm going to need you to stop talking to me. She said, I'm going to need you to stop talking to me if we're going to make it to where we're going, because she has a whole new idea about Black people. And she started unloading on her, and she was saying, and Joy, she said, I was so upset, my blood pressure. I said, now here's the problem. I said, nobody should ever get your blood pressure up. I said, I don't give a nickel's worth of time,
right?
Not a nickel's worth of time to people who are going to get my blood pressure up. I said, what are you doing? I said, there's something called a scientific zero that you have to cut. Scientific zero. Done. Zero.
It's the mantra.
It's
going to drive you crazy if you take away the keys.
If you take away the keys. And she said to me, she stopped and she goes, oh my God, what have I been doing? She said, I said, you've been trying to get this white woman, you're trying to convince this white woman something, or haven't you? You've been working yourself up trying to, you can say to her, here's everybody knows this is my line. Weren't those flowers nice?
Lovely this spring.
Weren't those flowers nice last spring? And that's it. That's all you're getting. We're done. And and again, I'm feeling some kind of way because we go through so much. We harm ourselves trying to get people.
But we can. That's the thing that I've been working with our families around, is like, what is your locus of control? Because at the end of the day, you can tell your child that you own your house. You can do all the things to make them feel safe and secure in the space. They don't have to know. If you are create a way to say, can nobody come in here and tell us this? If you do all that the same way that you do when you have a house that you own, you can create that same sense of stability. When you're stressed and anxious, the children are stressed and anxious, right? So you have to figure out how to regulate yourself. I know this when all my children, I'll just be concentrating and be like, Mom, you mad? Are you mad? I'm like, why would I'm not mad. You look so intense. They're like, I'm not mad. So it's one of those things where I feel like we have some control. But what I'm thinking about, we have 15 minutes left. So
I want to read some other stuff too.
Yeah, okay. So why don't you read this, the next stuff?
I want to read this piece from, and I'm trying to read from each of the books. And again, the span of time that we're talking about, how could you not know? How could these books be coming out? And there are a few more I could pull off the shelf of it. It's not like this is exhaustive, but these are pretty solid. How can we not know? How is it people, and this is where, like I know our kids come up against this in schools and everywhere else. Well, I just, America's a country where and I'm going, do you understand what this country is based on? Anyway, let me read this piece here. So, the history that has been hidden. Even though sundown towns were everywhere, almost no literature exists on the topic. No book has ever been written about the making of all white towns in America. Indeed, this story is so unknown as to deserve the term hidden. Most Americans have no idea such towns or counties exist, or they think such things happen mainly in the Deep South. Ironically, the traditional South has almost no sundown towns. Mississippi, for instance, has no more than 6, mostly mere hamlets, while Illinois has no fewer than 456. Even book-length studies of individual sundown towns rarely mention their exclusionary policies. Local historians omit the fact intentionally, knowing that it would reflect badly on their communities if publicized broadly. So what we're looking at here is we're ignorant, and we want to remain that way because it's so unpleasant. Human beings avoid difficult conversations. They avoid anything difficult, and Europeans even more so. So let's just not talk about it. We're not going to correct for it. We're just not going to talk about it. And then you have children growing up, and this is why we have to have these conversations, because our children grow up and they grow up in an environment that's sending them signals and giving them pictures of what reality is, and it's not reality. It's, in other words, we get snippets of anything positive. And it's amazing. It's almost like when anything wonderful is happening with Black people, it's like everybody's surprised.
Good for you.
It's just, that's how much we've normalized this craziness about who we are, how you begin to live inauthentically, like you were saying, and didn't even know it, right? The thing that happens is the older you get, they just give you room. They go, well, she's old. I don't care what they call me.
Well, first of all, I don't want to say that I was living inauthentically. Okay, that's not even I don't have the ability to just be inauthentic. I'm just way Blacker in my new role.
What you mean by way Blacker? But yeah,
what I mean by that is whatever Black that I show up in is how I get to be. It's not a, I get to do Black how I do Black, but I get to do it completely. And so for me,
think about it this way. Yeah. White people. Are there any white people that go, gosh, am I being too white?
Yes, I think there's some people who are aware that white actually has its own cultural set of, behaviors and values. I think when I was explaining to some of my white colleagues about how I was saying we can't do the white stuff at my office, they're like, well, what do you mean by that? Let me just give you an example. I said, if somebody says something to you, let's say, Mom, that you are supposed to meet me on Friday. Today is Wednesday. And I say to you, hey, just I would really appreciate it if you're on time on Friday. Now, you've never been not on time to come to meetings, and it's Wednesday. So you might say, what are you talking about? Now, that person may have just thought, I would really appreciate it. But when you say, I'd appreciate it. So now I'm getting stuff like, I didn't appreciate him saying, I would appreciate it. This is the kind of stuff that I get because that's that white stuff. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? You could easily just say, looking forward to meeting you on Friday, if you wanted to remind them. Or Thursday, say, gentle reminder, I have a meeting at such and such a time. So both of us, let's try to be there. There's so many ways to do it. But the condescending way, and it doesn't seem like it's condescending, is an aspect of whiteness that people who are aware go, am I being too white? They'll do that. So wait a minute, am I asking to, yes, you are. Or am I doing really white and doing this? Yes, you are. That's not anything wrong with you,
also
but with us.
Assumption that things like, which is interesting because I talk about in the book about on time, being efficient, being professional. See, these are also buzzwords.
Right.
And there's a fundamental assumption that everything that is the opposite of that would be Black. Right.
Right.
And it's and again, you have people who are running whole countries.
Well, I don't believe in Robert's Rules of Order or parliamentary procedure. There are tons of ways to arrive at consensus, right? Than to have to say aye, nay, abstain. Oh my God, poke my eye out. Right, I have to do that, and we can still arrive at a decision. We can still share ideas.
And there's other things that we have to begin to question.
Right.
It's like anything else. It's like our idea of, if I would ask everybody right now, what do you wear to an interview? What should one wear?
I'll tell you what I don't wear anymore. I don't wear suits. When you're a short woman and you wear a tailored suit, I'm telling all the short women out there, don't do it. Because you'll start to see this. Like, isn't she cute in her little suit? See? And then they want to try to pay you a cute salary. And I'm not the one. Okay.
It traumatize a little bit. Okay.
So I don't wear suits.
It's a little bit. But my point is that everything we define, intelligence, professionalism, all of those things, it's amazing to me. And we just accept what people say. Like, people have said to me, in my clinical practice, and I loved being in clinical practice. I loved my clients. I loved working with people. It was just something that kind of flowed with me. And I have to tell you, if I'd have done the things that I was told to do in my community, in the people that I was trying to help, I would have never gotten through the door. They would never come through the door, right? Now,
you might have fought a couple
times.
So
again, it's like, I think about all the things even I've been trained to do, and we just make an assumption, this must be the right way to do it. Right. Who says that's the right way to do it? You think they do it like that in China? They've been around for a long time. Okay, they don't do it like that in China. They don't do that in Nairobi. They don't do it like that. So when you start creating these notions of rightness, correctness, all of these things, they're colored by the delusion in this country, the absolute delusion of white supremacy. It just really does. And I think the difficulty that I'm struggling with right now is, what are our children seeing? What do young people believe about themselves? What do they believe when they see the media? I always do the little thing with my audiences where I have them close their eyes and give them a scene, and then they figure out who the people are because of what we've consistently seen in the media. There are more Black people that are actually doing okay, right? But we don't see that all the time. You don't see, even when you imagine graduations and people don't see Black people, but it's happening every day. Black people, running companies and organizations and advancing their education and studying and working and loving every day. That's been my experience, the majority of my experience in my 62 years. But that's not what I see. That's not what we're showing the children. And so I think when this whole thing came up, and I kept thinking, we got to talk about this whole idea of, how do you stay safe? How do you build village? How do you be inclusive when you're in danger?
Well, but there are things that you can do that we can stop. So one of the things that we don't do is, and I will say this, I have a few friends of mine, they know who they are, who are excellent at connecting me with other people who are Black, who are doing things. Excellent. They focus on, there's a Black person who owns this business you might want to connect with. And then you know what I do? I connect with them. That's right? Because that's the other thing, is that we don't promote the folks that we know who are doing those things. I always trying to put someone on. Our own sense of, wait, I should be the only one. Am I going to be threatened by somebody else's position? Also stops us from being able to create village. We know what they're going to be doing to us out here. If we can strengthen what we're doing in here, right? That's the first thing. Is that one thing that happened before desegregation, right? Before that happened, was that people had resources. They connected with one another. They felt value in that. They didn't like feeling collectively that they were being oppressed, but they did have that. And what I've noticed is that there's this kind of white rugged individualism people are starting to try to adopt in order for them to be successful. And that's not what's ever kept us safe or together or whole or growing. So for me, I'm like, what can we do? The first thing we can teach our daughters and our sons is to try to be connected with your fellow person. The cattiness, Instagram and Snapchat and all these things have allowed people, and TikTok, to backbite about other people publicly, to promote something that, somebody might have gotten in a fight in the past and you're like, yeah, they got in a fight, got a butt kicked, but now they have to relive it forever because it's on World Star or something, right? So one of the things that we can start to do, and I've told my brother this the other day, you can't watch or support things that are exploitive of people. right? You see someone who's poor, or you see someone who has a little kid, and they're making little kid, do things or say things that are, we can't continue to laugh at that and share those things. It's basically like the woman in my living room, it's like my kitchen, perfuming the space with that. We're perfuming the space. I heard my daughter's friends talking about who they think was going to have a baby first. I didn't hear who did they think was going to get married first. That wasn't the conversation. It wasn't who did they think was going to have the strong relationship in a family or have the degree, right? Those were the things that I was hearing in the conversation, and I pointed it out to them. You guys find it abnormal in any way that you weren't talking about having a solid relationship before you were talking about bringing another person into the world? That's fascinating, right? Like, and they were like, huh, because again, it's all about how we decide to tell folks what's the best for them, what we look at them and what we want to see. I want to see you get a degree, or I want to see you own your own business, or you know what, let's really focus on, we don't want you to work for anybody else. How can we create a way that none of you guys have to work for anyone else? Like, these are things that we can start to do, that I think that is within our control. We have to love one another. I was telling I don't know who I was telling this, but I tell all the time, because I'm always tap dancing for money. It's a little shuffling I got to do. But I told people, I said, listen, I really want to make people remember who they are. What we can't do is buy the illusion that we are less than,
Absolutely,
that we are not equipped, that we are not beautiful, that we are not, we don't have a promise and spirituality and intelligence and creativity. Like, these are all that's why everybody wants to be like us, because we have all those things. So we can't decide that, we go and we look and say, oh, Kim Kardashian wore a butt better than we do. Okay, like, this is the way that she wore it better than us. This is my issue. So when there was this whole thing around Adele, she had some Bantu knots, and she was wore some Bantu knots out in she was in Jamaica, or no, was she in Jamaica? I think she was in Jamaica, or anyway, she's wearing Jamaican colors, and the Jamaicans were kind of like, hey, she's just repping us, repping Jamaica, yay, right? And everybody's like, well, she may have been culturally appropriating, but not with ill intent. And I was like, I don't give a damn about intent. I only care about impact. I don't care about your intentions. But the reality for me was, if the impact, and I'm not saying she was trying to do something or whatever, but the impact is little Black girls who wear Bantu nets saying, wow, Adele looks pretty in them. I don't look pretty in my Bantu knots, but she looks pretty in them. This is when we start, that's the problem with that, because everybody's decided that if the white people do it, it's okay. And even if they do what we do, it's okay now when it's them. It's beautiful when it's them. It's new when it's them. And that's the part that I'm like, we can't control that, right? So, like, for instance, my daughter never saw a Disney princess until The Princess and the Frog, right? Never. Now, she got a lot of Disney presents, but I cut all the heads off, cut all the faces off, all the Disney dress-up clothes. So even when we got to Disney World or Disneyland, there was no like, oh, it's the princesses. Well, I told her that all her little outfits, that they were all fairy outfits, because fairies have powers and they don't wait around to get rescued. So we never had princess parties, but we did have fairy parties. So I told her that
I was a fairy.
That's right, you were fairy. So then we had we had a fairy, we had a fairy party, and all the people who came had to have a fairy like power, right? I remember, I think Sadai came with she had a army jacket and some fairy wings, and I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "Revolution Fairy." I was like, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. So anyway, all of the Disney princess outfits, I cut off the faces, and then I told her that these were different fairies who had powers. So the Snow White outfit, she said that fairy could run really, really fast. So when we got to Disneyland and she saw Snow White, she goes, "Mom, remember the fairy who could run really fast?" The fairy that can run really fast. So again, we can control, even though, again, there's so many things coming at us, without like telling the child they can't watch any TV. You can be careful about what you expose them to, how you empower them, how you make them feel like, no, we're the bomb. They're okay, but we're the bomb. Remember when Naima got the first white doll she ever got? Somebody gave her a cheerleading doll. And she goes like, "Mother, what do you think about this doll?" I was like, "She's cool. Why?" She was like, "What do you think about her skin?" I said, "Her skin is cool. She's not prettier than your other dolls, but she's cool. She's got a talent. She cheerleads. She got something going on. You know what I'm saying? Not mad at her." But that wasn't the primary doll. That wasn't this is the pretty doll, right? I think there's ways for us to control things in our space that don't allow our children to buy into that. And the more we do that, you know.
There's a piece, and I'm going to end here. It's actually a statement from Martin Luther King. And I remember when I read it, I felt some kind of way about it. He's talking about a conversation he had with his mother. And I just listened to it. He says, every parent at some time faces the problem of explaining the facts of life to his child. Just as inevitably for the Negro parent, the moment comes when he must explain to his offspring the facts of segregation. My mother took me on her lap and began to tell me about slavery and how it had ended with the Civil War. She tried to explain the divided system of the South, the segregated schools, restaurants, theaters, housing, the white and colored signs on drinking fountains, waiting rooms, lavatories, as a social condition rather than a natural order. Then she said the words that almost every Negro hears before he can yet understand the injustice that makes them necessary. You are as good as anyone. The injustice that makes it necessary. And the whole time you were talking, I was thinking about the injustices that make it necessary for us to have to do that, for us to deliberately create a way for our children to love themselves. Do you know what I'm saying? There is, and then there's, again, we live this life, we know what this is, but the injustice that makes it necessary, the injustice that even makes Wellness Wednesdays necessary. And then you have to sit in a room with people that go,
I don't know.
Things have changed, aren't you?
I don't know.
See, this is why
Is that bad?
This is where things could lead to violence. Okay, because you just get
no. This is where my therapeutic stuff comes in, because the thing that you gifted me with, thank you, Mom, is a quick brain. So people say something to me, my goal. I want you clutching your pillow tonight in shame for what you said or did. So I'm going to be very nice and very, very meticulously let you remind you that you are not accessing your full humanity in this moment. That's the one thing I get to hold on to, as I have my full humanity, right? I'm never going to do something that I won't try to correct if it is harmful in any way. Nothing gets taken away from me to change my behavior and shift and do better. So when she decided not in my kitchen to say, oh my gosh, I've been saying that for years. When she decided not to acknowledge that she had done something wrong, she decided not to access her full humanity in that moment. She decided not to be a human being in her fullness. And that's on her. That's not my fault. And I'm not about to freak out about it. I am going to get her, because there's justice. But that's the thing. At the end of the day, we have our humanity. We always have. And the only time that it starts to go away is when we forget who we are and how noble we are.
Yes.
Right? I'm so tired of us talking about being resilient. Let's talk about what happens after the fact. I always feel like we stab victims, and we're like, we're so good at getting stabbed. You just don't die. I'm gonna stop. We got to stop the stabbers.
You got to stop the stabbers. And we have to, there was something, I was in a class. It was a book one. I'm in a book one class. Anyway, long story. Anyway, so I'm doing this book one, and there was a question that was asked about when you do things wrong, right? What do we feel mentally, emotionally, spiritually? What happens? What happens when we choose, when you choose to do the wrong thing? When the woman was realizing that maybe I shouldn't be calling this a slave and hardworking, and this one's lazy. The other oven was lazy.
The slow oven, inefficiently cooking oven.
And there's a point at which each one of us make decisions in our lives. And I remember reading a piece around wrongdoing and when people do things that are wrong. And that what happens in that moment, you use as a term, you're not accessing your full humanity. But what we do when we decide to do something that's wrong, whatever that thing is we rob the world of goodness in that moment. and we add to the pollution. And I remember reading that, I must have been 20 years ago, I'm reading about that it's not that we say evil or sin or any of those things. It's about having the opportunity to deliberately place goodness in the world and not robbing yourself or the world in that moment of that goodness. And then being someone who adds to the pollution. I mean, it just really changed me. It did something to me to think about it that way. So I don't, I know that we do what we do. We love what we do. We love people. We're clearly not perfect people, but we want to help people. That is what, someone asked me about my children. And what I admire most about my children is that they're kind and that they're loving and that they share and that they help and that they give and that they produce. I think about that, the fact that I know every single one of my children are kind and loving and giving. And it's as though those qualities are ignored. It's not, and I'm glad that in addition to that, they went to school, they have good jobs, they're getting degrees, and that's fine. But more important to me is the kind of character, the kind of person that you are. And I thought about, Martin Luther King sitting on his mother's lap and her having to have that hard conversation with her son who had such promise, who was so amazing. And yet she had to very gingerly explain to him a system that has no explanation. There is no way to make it right. So I think that whatever we decide to do, I might still call those folk that
Georgia. Give me a little plot of land.
Can I?
Summer vacationing.
But I'm not mad at them. I understand it. I appreciate it. Not only that, just in terms of it as a business move. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that's going into that. And, I don't know. But I think all of us for a moment thought, gosh, is there a space we could be safe and be loved? Yeah. Is there a space where we can prosper and grow and not be molested? Is there a space, right? And again, you're right. My husband says to me the other day, he says, you're not in Syria. We're not dealing with bombs falling on our heads, at least not yet.
Not yet. I would say that we have the ability to create that, though, what you're saying, Mom. We have the ability to create those safe spaces. And that's the thing that I want people to remember. You can control if you talk about your neighbor. You can control if you demean someone for the job that they have. You can control that, right? You can beam light into children. You can beam light into men and women who you walk down the street and see. You have that capacity to make them feel safe with you in that moment. And the more that you build those moments, that is also putting something out into the universe. I was just telling my son that today. When you put out positivity, it just creates its own energy around you. It just does. Yeah. And I think that we can do that. So while we're working towards feeling safe, literally in our space, we have to create safety in our hearts and with other people who look like us too. That's not segregation. That's integration. All right. True integration with one another. And that's what we do on Wellness Wednesday. My mom and I are very integrated. So we want to integrate with y'all. Now, shout out to Organic Oneness.
Absolutely.
You can see it down here. Organic.
And I wanted to shout out to Tracy, my niece, who was on, that is running for the school board in Monrovia. And here's the thing.
Monrovia, California.
Monrovia, California. And what I'm saying is, it's not just promoting her. I walked through her school. I walked through the school with she and Nisi and Carmen, and she knew the name of every single child, because she loved those children and she loves her staff. And I watched her do that for 30 years. That's who you need on your school board. You need Tracy Golar.
She beams light. Beams light.
Right.
So now, and these are all those plugs. Organic Oneness, like I was saying, our good friend Saida Taylor in Chicago, who is working for justice by
Absolutely.
and she really is trying to create that true integration in the work that she's doing. So if you're in Chicagoland area, look up Organic Oneness, support some of the things that they're doing. She pushes for justice, and that's how we know we're going to get to unity. And last thing to shout out, please visit the Black Parent Initiative website. We are having our annual fundraiser to serve Black families in Portland, and you know they need it. So please visit www.thebpi.org. Yes, I'm the executive director of the Black Parent Initiative, and you can join, I think, for free. You can join our live luncheon for free, and we're going to have Dr. Joy giving us a word and some beautiful, talented children singing and talking about what our organization means to them. So please tune in. Anyway, we're happy you're joining us. We're happy we're together. We're creating these safe spaces, and please do the same where you are.
Thank you so much. I'm going back to bed. I'm tired.
And I'm sleepy too. Today, look, I'm in the dark. It's rough.
We had part of the storm coming in.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It rained all day today.
Well, we have the forest fire, so we have the dark haze. So I got, I've been, my air purifiers running, got my sage in the water boiling out and just trying to clean my air. So I know I don't sound as
that they don't have a lot of those fires contained. Is that correct?
It's crazy right now. So we, they're all, it's terrible. The air quality is that hazardous here. So we are, I just ordered more air filters. So yeah, pray for us in the Northwest. Oh, actually the whole West Coast is burning. So yeah. But anyway, see you all.
Pray for humanity.
Yes. And all of us.
We all need it right now.
All right. Well, see you guys next week.
Be safe, be happy, be well.